It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 28. Why I went from non-union to union to Phicorp all in one summer with Eric S. Robertson.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and if you're interested in making money as an actor and balancing the hectic lifestyle, you found the right podcast. It's great to have you here. And if you're new to the podcast and have yet to subscribe, pull up iTunes or your podcast's app and click the subscribe button. You'll get weekly episodes as they come out. This is episode 28, titled Why I Went from Non-Union to Phicorp all in one summer with Eric S. Robertson. The show notes for this episode have all the important links referenced in today's show, which you can pull up right now at actingincome.com/episode 28. And now, here's a word from today's sponsor, quite appropriately, the Phicorp Workbook. It's no doubt that trying to find factual information about financial core status for the actor is like venturing into a minefield. That's why I created the Phicorp Workbook. The Phicorp Workbook, available on phicorpcentral.com, is a downloadable ebook with impartial, factual information about financial core, so you can decide whether it's right for your acting career. And if you decide financial core is right for you, the Phicorp Workbook walks you through what Phicorp is like, how to do it, and what to do after declaring it, taking a lot of the fear and quest for information on Phicorp out of the equation for you. But even if you find it's not right for you, you'll learn information about Phicorp status you can pass along to other actors so they can make the best decisions for themselves, rather than pass along bad information or unqualified opinion. I've aimed to make it the best resource on Phicorp out there. To download the Phicorp Workbook, make sure to visit phicorpcentral.com/workbook. That's phicorpcentral.com/workbook. Well, look what we have here. Eric S. Robertson returns to the Acting Income Podcast with a bit of an update on his acting career. As you may remember, I interviewed Eric all the way back in episode 9 of this podcast, and he expressed with conviction why he chose to stay a non-union actor. I have to say it was a pretty strong case, and an opinion that had some influence on me at the time as a SAG-AFTRA member. But shortly after that interview, perhaps even to Eric's surprise, his opinion about being proudly non-union started to change. And over the course of this past summer of 2015, Eric transformed from being a non-union actor to a union actor to a Phicorp actor. In this interview with Eric, he explains why he made the shift from non-union to Phicorp, and you'll want to listen, not just if you're an actor considering declaring financial core status, but also if you're a non-union actor faced with the dilemma of, should you go union, or should you maybe consider Phicorp? You can probably listen to today's episode without listening to Eric's earlier interview, but it wouldn't hurt if you did listen to it before. To date, it's one of the most popular episodes. Eric's earlier episode, titled Why I Choose to Stay a Non-Union Actor, along with his acting bio, are available at actingincome.com/episode 9. And if you don't have a clue what I mean by the term Phicorp, have no fear. The short of it is, if you're Phicorp, you're able to work on both union and non-union jobs without the fear of union punishment. 2 prior episodes of the podcast cover the topic. Episode 7 with Ricardo Lori talks about how going Phicorp affected his acting career and is at actingincome.com/episode 7. And episode 19 with yours truly talks about my own motivations for going Phicorp and is at actingincome.com/episode 19. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of this episode for info on how to sign up for the Phicorp Autoresponder series, which will give you some additional information to weigh whether Phicorp is right for you. But enough about past episodes. Let's get to the present, and present it is. Here's my interview with actor Eric S. Robertson. Eric S. Robertson, welcome back to the Acting Income Podcast.
Thank you. This is the ironic episode. That's what we'll call this one.
This is ironic because you were last in episode 9 of the Acting Income Podcast, and the title of that episode was proudly why I choose to stay a non-union actor. And we've already talked a little bit about what the title of this episode is, and I've teased this episode a little bit in the intro. But let me understand what happened from recording that episode on why you choose to be a non-union actor until today.
The short story is I listened to episode 7 of this podcast, Ricardo Laurie talking about why he was Phicorp, and was like, that's for me. Because I'd heard about Phicorp for years, and I've been trying to get information for years, literally years, like on set, talking to people, afterwards talking to people as a non-union person myself, and talking to other non-union people, talking to union people, and nobody would talk about it, even to a non-union person. I know now, and I understood at the time, how union people don't like Phicorp and don't want to out themselves as a Phicorp person on set and stuff like that to other union people. I'd even heard stories about union people who will come up to people they find out are Phicorp and like assault them, I think verbally only, but either way it sounds unpleasant. But nobody would talk about it. So the short answer is I got some good information from Ricardo. It was amazing, I thought, because after he heard my interview as to why I stayed non-union, he contacted you and was like, give him my phone number because we need to talk. So we did. We talked for like an hour. I had a huge list of questions and he answered all of them. And I got some real information from somebody who would talk about it. And I was like, yeah, this is for me. It covers all the bases that I need and gives me the most options. And I was like, I think this is right for me.
So you weren't union yet. You were a non-union actor and you were considering Phicorp. When you're considering Phicorp, you have to be eligible to join the union, or you have to be a member of the union and resign your membership to go Phicorp. So as a non-union actor, you weren't eligible. Walk me through the process to getting to Phicorp then if you were a non-union actor.
The process actually is pretty easy, and I've been SAG eligible for years as an equity member, and also I had my waivers 3 years ago. I just didn't want to join because I didn't want to give up all the work opportunities that I was getting.
You were eligible to join the union, you weren't in the union, so you could join at that moment, and that's what put you in a position to go Phicorp.
Right. People ask me now who are not in the union, and they're like, oh, I'll just join Phicorp. And I sort of explained that's not how it works. You join the union, become a member, and then declare your Phicorp status, which is what I did. So basically, a week after listening to Ricardo and speaking to Ricardo, I got my ducks in a row financially and joined the union with the intention of going Phicorp right away.
Before we get to that point, let me get a better understanding of what specifically about Phicorp was appealing to you as a non-union actor. I guess it was the wages. I guess it was some other benefits, but I'm not really sure. Tell me some of the things that Ricardo brought to your mind about being a Phicorp actor and why that was interesting to you.
The reason that I was not joining the union was I was getting a lot of work and a lot of great work, stuff from my reel we talked about a lot, speaking roles on national TV, national commercials, all these things that were all non-union, and I didn't want to give that up. Nobody wants to say this, and this is an oversimplification, but really where it applies, where it actually applies, is you can do union jobs and non-union jobs.
When you go Phicorp, you're allowed to work both union and non-union, but when you're a union actor, you're disallowed from working non-union.
That's right. Basically, I wanted to continue doing the work that I was doing while opening up my options of doing union work as well. Also, in a given month, if I haven't made enough, I'll do some background work. And if I can turn that background work into union background work instead of non-union background work and make 4 times the money while still giving myself the option of being on this or that TV show or this independent film, then that's what I wanted to do. That was very appealing to me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were also thinking of your future. There's health benefits and you're eligible for a pension when you join the union. So were those factors interesting to you?
Yes and no. For health insurance, there's always other options. For pensions, there are other options as well. But certainly it is something that was appealing. It's funny because when I joined the union, I started going into the meetings and really looking at what the health and pension benefits and plans are. And they're pretty pricey as it is. It's not like all of a sudden you join the union and poof, you can go get your teeth done and get surgery on your foot and it's all well and good. The plans are expensive and the requirements in order to be eligible for those plans are pretty high as well. So it's not that it was either I was in the union or I had no health insurance whatsoever or I had no pension. There are certainly other ways to do it. But that was definitely something that was appealing about
So from what it sounds to me is the allure of more money that come with union jobs was particularly attractive to you. You had a pretty solid non-union acting career. You were working in commercials, you were working in television, and you were also doing background work on union projects, but as a non-union actor. And you were seeing that if you worked background as a union actor, you could make, as you said, about 4 times the amount.
Yeah, basically, I was like, when it comes to background, it's not my focus. Obviously, it's the acting, which is why I didn't join the union earlier. But I was also like, if this is what I am going to do, if I'm going to be making any money at all doing this, I better make as much as humanly possible.
So now let's get to the point of when you decided to join the union. How did you go about pursuing joining the union? You said you were SAG eligible. What was the next step?
I was already SAG eligible, so basically I got my 3 waivers together. I also could have brought in my union membership. Doing the waivers for some reason felt a little more legit, but I basically walked into the union and I said I'd like to join. They said, "Can I see your waivers?" I said, "Here they are." I filled out the paperwork. I put it on my credit card. That was another thing that was important to me. Because there's so much you don't know about going Phicorp, I wanted to do it as soon as possible, and I wanted to make sure that there was nothing outstanding in terms of maybe I couldn't do it if I still had some money on their payment plan or something like that.
Right. You never know if there was some kind of obstacle that you haven't heard of. I can understand that.
Exactly. So basically, I went in and I just said I wanted to join, and they said, great. Now, they didn't offer Phicorp as an option. They didn't say, did you want to join this way or this way? I didn't ask.
They didn't say anything about your Beck rights.
No, they didn't. Now, if I had asked, maybe they would have told me. Legally, they're not allowed to hide that, and I didn't ask, and they didn't offer. But I'm sure they would have told me if I'd asked.
So when you joined as a member, I remember you telling me about how you were so welcomed into the union by the people who were helping you there. And you also had this secret agenda, so to speak, of going Phicorp eventually. Tell me what that was like emotionally for you.
Well, actually, it was kind of difficult. And that, I think, speaks more to my personality than the ins and outs of a career or an acting or professional life. But actually, it's different than what you said, because you just said going Phicorp eventually. And my actual plan was to go Phicorp ASAP. So as soon as I walked in, they were like, "Oh, welcome, you're a member and you get this welcome package and everything is so beautiful," and they were so happy. And I did kind of feel like I was kind of stabbing them in the back and kind of hurting them and saying like, "Oh, I'm a proud member," when in the back of my mind, that's not really the case. Although it is the case. But see, this is what's so strange about it, is part of me is like, is that the way it was? Or part of me is like, have I just really drank the Kool-Aid of all the SAG anti-Phicorp rhetoric? I've sort of heard about this years ago on set, and I was like, I don't know. So I went onto the SAG website to see if I could hear anything about it. And the first thing that comes up is this big splash page about Phicorp that says, "You're not a union member, you're a scab, you cannot carry a card," all that kind of stuff. So there's all this scary, scary information, coupled with the fact that nobody on set would talk about it, just made it really scary. And part of me is like, I feel like I was lying to those people as they're like, "You're going to get this and you can take this class and SAG is wonderful and blah, blah, blah," because I knew that I was going to stab them in the back and go Phicorp. Or is it just me being overdramatic? Or is it because I drank the Kool-Aid based on all their rhetoric?
Well, I can understand why it would be so emotional for you. I mean, you're talking about images of stabbing people in the back and drinking the Kool-Aid. It was emotionally charged from the get-go. And I suppose that you could say the propaganda against going financial core worked, because it made it a scary thing for you to do. And the more you can be scared about going financial core as an actor, delays your going there if you ever go there at all.
Right. And I'm not saying everybody should either. It's right for me because that's where my work is right now. I'm not willing to give up any work right now. That's all. The problem with the union is the union cannot get people work. And I want to get as much work as possible. The union can improve your conditions while you're on set, and that's basically all they can do. They can get you more money, they can get you more work. And I love the union for that. I love the union. I love what they do, and I love everything about them, which I want to say, that's why I went Phicorp. Because I love the union. I had the option not to join, or I have the option to do what a lot of people do, and people seem to think this doesn't happen, but it does, is just join the union and then work all the non-union jobs I can. I was non-union for many years, and I can't even tell you, I don't think I can even count how many times the people on set right beside me on this non-union set were union.
They were working off the card?
Yeah, off the card, as they call it. So it's an ironic thing because they are enjoying all the benefits of union membership, while maybe I am not because I'm Phicorp and people are looking at me and... But at the same time, I'm the one actually who's being honest. That's one of the reasons I went Phicorp, is because I love what they do and I wanted to be upfront.
As a point of clarification for those listening, if you become a union member, you are bound by the Constitution and bylaws, and specifically by Global Rule 1, which prohibits any union member in SAG-AFTRA from working in any non-union productions, any non-signatory productions, globally. That means anywhere around the world, as long as the union has jurisdiction in that area. Now, when you're financial core, you no longer have to abide by the union rules, meaning you don't have to abide by Global Rule 1, which then means that you can work both union and non-union jobs. So the phrase working off the card means that you are a union member who is skirting around the rules of the union. You're maintaining a union membership while also working non-union, and that is strictly against the union's constitution and bylaws. Now, when you're financial core, you're fully permitted to do that because you're not bound by union rules, and you're not working off the card. You are legally permitted to work both union and non-union. So essentially what you're saying is, are you legally going to take non-union work, or are you going to illegally take non-union work? And when you're working off the card, you're illegally taking non-union work. Apologies if that's too strong of a term, but I think there are certain legal implications because you have a contract with the union when you're a member, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. That actually offends me a lot more. If we're going to do the same thing, at least I'm being honest about it. I can say to the union, hey, you can think of me what you want, but I'm being open and honest and telling you exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what's in the future for me. Whereas other people are, and a lot of people.
Give me a number. What does a lot mean?
I could count at least 10 to 12 times where I was on set and knew that the other person was SAG.
You were on a non-union production, and then there was a SAG-AFTRA member working off the card on the non-union production.
Right.
And that person was not a Phicorp actor.
Well, actually, some of them might have been, but I do know for sure that a couple of them were not. One guy, we were sitting around between takes and just talking about the union and all this kind of stuff, and he was talking about how he did a union job, and we were like, but aren't you SAG? And he was like, bleep SAG? What do I care? They don't know, blah, blah, blah.
He was bleep SAG.
Yeah, that was his response. And to be totally honest, I don't like that at all. I find that very offensive. And that's the thing, too. You can think of whatever you want of me as a SAG member, but I'm being open and I'm being honest. And if you're feeling like you're being undermined, I'm not lying to your face or whatever.
Now, you told me that you're an actor who wants to work. And let's do a bit of a case study. So when you were non-union, you were working pretty regularly. You joined the union. You are now bound by the Constitution and bylaws, by Global Rule 1. You did not turn Phicorp right when you walked out of the membership office, correct?
Yeah, it took me about a month or so.
For a month, you were union. What was your audition situation like? Did you find you had more auditions, fewer auditions?
I found my audition situation in terms of SAG auditions was pretty much exactly the same as before, which was none. Actually, that's not true. I had one. I auditioned for a promo and I landed it, but was none.
So you went from a non-union actor who auditioned, 3 to 5 times a week? And then you joined the union and you had, for a month, one audition. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, one SAG audition. Now, here's the thing, especially towards the end when I was starting to start the process of going Phicorp, I started going to non-union auditions again, and then it picked up back to like a couple a week. But that's the thing. That goes back to what I'm talking about, is that being union does not get you more work. It does not get you more auditions because your union status has nothing to do with your demand as an actor. This business is built on how much demand you have for your services as an actor. And being a union member doesn't get you that. My auditions didn't go up because I don't have an agent. I get the non-union auditions in my Actors Access Breakdown. And I get a couple SAG auditions in my Actors Access Breakdown. But for the most part, it's all non-union. All the union auditions are going to agents. So turning SAG, thinking all of a sudden I'm going to be auditioning for Blue Bloods or like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever when they come in, that's not going to happen because that doesn't go to union members. That goes to agents.
You know, this speaks to a lot of the frustration that working actors have when they move from non-union to union. I went to a membership orientation meeting back in June, and I heard new union members, when they went from non-union to union, they almost never worked. And they were working a lot when they were non-union. And the union's response, it was a particular person from the union, said basically that when you become union, you have to develop new relationships with casting directors specifically, that there are non-union casting directors and there's union casting directors. And you just got to spend some time developing that relationship. Now, what I find aggravating is that if you're an actor who is generating a decent income as a non-union actor and you go union, why are you suddenly supposed to be destitute or give up on that stuff? That's not necessarily what's being said, but it seems to be what's being encouraged. Like, you know what? just deal with not making any money. And another thing I heard someone at that same meeting say was, maybe you should consider doing something else. And what I found offensive about this, that this was a labor union telling its workers to do some other activity other than what they are supposed to be doing.
Right.
So it gets emotional for me too at some point. But that said, going Phicorp is, in my opinion, a personal decision. It's not something I necessarily advocate. I just want to make that point.
You were a member of the union for however many years, and then went Phicorp to expand your options into the non-union world, where I was a non-union actor, and I joined the union and then went Phicorp to expand my options into the union world. That's another thing, too. When I joined the union, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of people, like you said at that meeting, I had spent however many years building up really strong relationships with casting directors, with producers, with directors of TV shows that are on national TV, to the point where like they just call me up and like, hey, are you free Thursday? And I'm like, absolutely. I do the thing. It's lines. It's a role. It's great for my reel, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't want to give that up. Now, I understand that when you join the union, that's the choice you make. I, for me, personally, was not willing to make that choice. All I wanted to do was, if I was on set, let's say doing background work, or I want to start auditioning for larger profile TV shows and stuff like that, but all I wanted to do was, when I'm on set, I want to make more money and give myself more options when I'm on set. That was for me.
You developed relationships with non-union production companies when you were a non-union actor. You went union and you had to end those relationships, at least temporarily. How did you manage those relationships in the time that you were a union actor?
Luckily for me, that time was very short. So basically, I just didn't apply for that job if it came up on Actors Access for a couple weeks. Once I had started the process of going Phicorp, then I was like, okay, I'm just going to pick this back up and apply again.
Was anyone knocking on your door saying, hey, we want to work with you? And you said, I can't. I'm union now.
No, that never happened. Luckily. That was very serendipitous for me. Because let's say the process of joining Phicorp had taken much longer, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do these non-union things until I am Phicorp. And let's say it had been 2 months, and within that 2 months, somebody had said, hey, are you available Thursday? Then it would have been a decision for me to say, well, I'm going Phicorp anyway, or I just don't want to turn down this work, or I don't want to sever this relationship. I'm just going to do it anyway. Luckily for me, the stars aligned, and it was just a very short period.
So in the summer of 2015, you joined the union with the express decision to go Financial Corps. You remained in the union for about a month, and then you actually declared Financial Corps status. Walk me through that process.
Basically, I joined the union, got my paperwork, all that kind of stuff. I put it on my credit card. Then I called SAG Pension and Health and AFTRA Health and Retirement, making sure that all my information was there, that my account was set up. Strangely enough, when I called AFTRA, I'd already had an account for about a year.
Okay.
And I don't know what that was. I tried to ask them when it had opened, and it didn't seem to correspond with a waiver. So I have no idea how I had an account in there. But anyway, so once I found out that they were all in order, then I went about the process. Ricardo Laurie had said to call Sally Tisch, so I called Sally Tisch.
Sally Tisch is at SAG-AFTRA?
Yeah, and she's at SAG-AFTRA in LA. I didn't get through to her. I got her assistant. He said, how can I help you? I said, my name's Eric Robertson. I'm a union member, and I'd like to go Phicorp. And he said, she's not available right now. She can either call you back, or you can call the person in New York.
Norris Borkenfuso. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but Norris.
So then I called, got an answering machine, called, got an answering machine, called, got an answering machine. And I didn't really want to leave a message saying, I want to go Phicorp. So I just didn't want to taint the water before I could really dive in. But then I realized, I listened to the podcast again, and I thought, wait a second, the reason that Ricardo says to call Sally Tisch is to learn how to go Phicorp. I know how to go Phicorp. So I went online, downloaded the form letter. I'm sure that's in the Phicorp workbook.
There is guidance in the Phicorp workbook on phicorpcentral.com about writing a letter to the union declaring your Financial Corps status.
Exactly. So the information's there. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to write the letter. I put the card in the letter and sent that in, sent in the letter. I took records of it, so I knew exactly when it was sent and stuff like that. And that was that. Then, about a month and a half, 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail from them saying, you're officially Phicorp. You cannot call yourself a union member. You cannot do this. You cannot do that. And if you want to rejoin the union. And I have to admit, I knew that letter was coming. It was a relief to know that it had officially gone through. But it was still kind of sad. It still felt like kind of a rejection letter. The wording was harsh, and it just kind of made me feel sad.
Yeah, that's the Financial Corps acknowledgement letter. I've put a sample acknowledgement letter also in the Phicorp workbook. And I know what you're talking about. What that letter also includes is the prorating of your dues to the agency fees that you now pay when you're a financial core.
Which, it's a funny thing because I'm like, I'd be more than happy to pay full dues. I don't know, it just felt very strange. But I didn't wait. Once I had put that letter in the mail, in my mind, I was Phicorp. If they took a year to process it, it wasn't my problem.
If my information is correct, at 12:01 a.m., the day after you put that letter in the mail, you, in the eyes of the law, become financial core. That's even before they receive the letter. And if you're putting return receipt in the mail, you'll get the return receipt, and then the month and a half, 2 months, whatever time period, you'll get the acknowledgement letter, which only just outlines some information for you. It doesn't necessarily make it any more official. Per the information I have, at 12:01 a.m., the day after you drop the letter in the mail, you can start working as a non-union actor. You may want to check with your lawyer just to double check that information.
And for me, the biggest delay was actually calling. Once I realized that I didn't need to call because I already knew what to do, then I just went ahead with it. And as soon as I dropped the letter in the mail, I started applying for non-union auditions and started getting auditions. It was a funny thing. Like, it was this little hump. But then I went into Central Casting and updated my account to give them my union number, because you keep your number. I still do lots of gigs, which is great. And when I do background gigs, they're union.
And you've seen an increase in your acting income as a result of going Phicorp. You're able to work as a union actor as well as a non-union actor.
Yeah, that's correct. But again, my acting income has gone up because, let's say I do a union background gig. Now I have the possibility of pulling in like $400 in just one day. Now I'm on set hoping it'll rain. And now I'm on set hoping that they won't give us lunch. And I'm on set hoping we go past 8 p.m. You know, all that kind of stuff. Whereas before, it didn't matter because I didn't get any of those things.
And you've also opened up the potential to work on a commercial as a union actor and bring in the union rates that they command. But you can also work on a non-union commercial if you so choose and bring in perhaps a sizable amount of money, not the union scale, but still an amount that's going to make you really happy when you go home.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing. We talked about this last time. The union sort of paints this picture that the non-union is Wild West and like people are like, you know, in bikinis in the winter getting ice thrown on them and the producer throws poison darts at them. It's not like that at all. You know, you can make thousands of dollars on a non-union commercial and you can make hundreds of dollars doing background on a non-union commercial. Actually, the last non-union gig I had before joining the union was background on a non-union commercial, and I made $500 that day. That's not bad. But I also do want to say going Phicorp is very specific to the actor because commercials are a place where I really, really believe in what the union's doing. I believe in everything the union is doing. I just understand their reach is only so far. But in commercials, I really, really believe in what the union's doing because they have the protection of it's a buyout only for 13 weeks, and if they want to keep playing your commercial, they have to pay you residuals, and they pay you again and again and again. Whereas in the non-union commercial world, they can just play your commercial for the rest of your life. And now, let's say you do a Coke commercial, you get $100 when you're 20, they play it for the rest of your life. You audition at 35 for a Pepsi commercial, and now you're SAG and all this kind of stuff, and you have the potential to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Coke can say, no, you signed a thing that said you won't do anything with our competitors. You now have a conflict in perpetuity. So that is somewhere that I really, really believe in what they're doing. And it's great what they do. The thing is, that's commercials. Me, I have a commercial reel. I've done a bunch of commercials, but am I going to make my living doing commercials? No, I'm not going to. I'd love to. I'm balding. How many balding 35-year-olds do you see in commercials? Not many. The point of that is it's individual for each actor.
And I'll also add to this point. There are producers out there who will exploit their workers. Some will exploit them grossly. And a union can help prevent a producer from grossly exploiting its workers. So unions do, in my opinion, serve a very important role. This is to say that not all producers are going to exploit actors. So is a union necessary for actors when they're working on these types of jobs that aren't going to exploit them? It's a good question.
It also comes back to, I believe, that this entire thing is not about union membership, and it's not about Phicorp, and it's not about being non-union. It's about creating demand for you and your services. So even within the union, there are some people who work and some people who don't. The people who do work have created demand, whether it's background, whether it's a stand-in, whether it's the spokesperson of a show. I heard that on the X-Men movie, I don't know if this is true, but let's just say it is, that Jennifer Lawrence, when she was playing Mystique, was only allowed to be in her blue makeup for 6 hours a day. If the producers went over 6 hours a day, they owed her $250,000. That might be true. That might be not. That might be an exaggeration. But either way, the union didn't get that. That's not a union stipulation. That's not in a union contract. The reason that she was able to get that, the reason that she's on the top in IMDb is because of the demand. The audience has demanded that they want her in that movie. That's where the union reaches the end of its tether. Because I know that they have a big campaign right now called The Best in the Biz, but they have no way of backing that up. They can't say that they have the people who are the best in the biz. They can't say that they represent the best and anybody else is not, because the way people are let into the union. You can Taft-Hartley a friend, or let's say you get in through background. You get 3 waivers. That's a pretty random system. And, being on set and talking with people, you hear all these stories. I know someone who was in college, came home for spring break, needed something to do, went on set for 3 days, got 3 waivers. She's in the union. She's never been on set for more than 3 days. Then you have people who are doing this for 5 years, never got a waiver.
Yeah, how do you call the actor who's only worked 3 days on a set the best in the biz when you have someone who's worked many, many days on a set for 5 years and hasn't gotten into the union?
But the thing is that because that's not what it's based on, this entire business is not based on union membership. And I think people who join the union right out of college realize this. That doesn't mean you're good. That doesn't mean you're going to work. Basically, this business is based on how much demand is there for your type. If you're doing background for 5 years and not getting any waivers, it's because there's not a lot of demand for your type. The reason that woman got 3 waivers on her first 3 days is because probably there's a high demand for girls in her type. And that's the way this business works. So SAG cannot say we have the best in the biz. Maybe they can, but that's an irrelevant claim anyway. That's not how this business works.
Eric, thank you so much for talking about Financial Core, about your movement from why I chose to stay a non-union actor to why I suddenly shifted to union and eventually went Phicorp. Is there anything else you want to share with the Acting Income Podcast audience about this topic?
I guess one thing I did want to say, this business is so hard and it's all supply and demand. And there's so little demand in terms of jobs, and there's so much supply in terms of actors. And we all make decisions. I have nothing but the most admiration for the people who are stalwart SAG members and don't do non-union. I have nothing but admiration for the people who go Phicorp because it's tough. I have nothing but admiration for the people who stay non-union, which is what I did. Back then, actually, I felt like I had more conviction. Since joining the union, I feel I've sort of lost that, I'm awesome. I know who I am and I know where I fit. But the union is in a difficult position because the one playing card they have is telling their members not to work. And there are so many things in this world and in this business that are stopping actors from working. And I just can't go for that. I want to work. People want to work. And if your only card is say don't work, that puts you in a very, very difficult position. And that's not a position I wanted to be in.
Sobering. Very sobering thought. Eric S. Robertson, thank you so much for talking to the Acting Income Podcast audience.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's been great.
As I said before, I have some information on how to sign up for the Phicorp Autoresponder series, which will give you some additional information to weigh whether Phicorp is right for you. If you visit actingincome.com/Phicorp mail, you can subscribe to my autoresponder series on financial core status, which includes an MP3 of actor Ricardo Lori from episode 7, sharing 2 experiences he had with casting directors who questioned his Phicorp status and how he dealt with it. Juicy, juicy info. You'll also get lists of what you keep, lose, and gain when you go Phicorp, so you can better conceptualize what being a union member means or doesn't mean to you. Again, to sign up for the Phicorp Autoresponder series, visit actingincome.com/Phicorp mail, and if you missed that link, it's also in the show notes. I'm most grateful for Eric S. Robertson for returning to the podcast to share his interesting transformation as an actor. I wish him much luck, and that's the show. This episode was sponsored by the Phicorp Workbook from Phicorp Central. To purchase the Phicorp Workbook, visit phicorpcentral.com/workbook. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode 28, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. If you'd like to pitch an episode idea, visit actingincome.com/pitch. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, visit actingincome.com/advertise. And if you love the content of this podcast, share your love with a review of this podcast on iTunes at actingincome.com/iTunes. I'm Ben Hauck. Yes, that Ben Hauck. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com.